Welcome everyone to today's webinar on how to monitor and troubleshoot remote user experience. By ways of introductions, you have myself, Stacy Leidwinger, and I lead the marketing team here at Goliath. And we also have Yemi Ladyju, who's our senior technical consultant and is going to be highlighting the technology today. Before we get started, I did want to take care of a few housekeeping items. First, in terms of agenda, we're just going to spend a few minutes kind of setting up many of the challenges I'm sure a lot of you are facing as we really enter into this exclusive work from home environment for a lot of our workers and the experience challenges that exist and why they exist. We'll then talk about how purpose-built technology can help you overcome those challenges, specifically around Citrix and VMware Horizon environments, and highlight both in use cases and technologies on how you can overcome those challenges. If you have questions, please put them in the Q&A box. We'll answer them throughout or get to them at the end. And one question we always get is, will this recording be available? Yes, within 24 hours of this recording, you will have a copy in your inbox. So with this, let's get started. When I speak with a lot of IT professionals today, I ask them, what makes it so challenging to support your remote workforce? What has everyone working from home really added on top of your traditional workload? And they said to me, you know what, Stacey, it's not that anything's been additive, it's just increased complexity, and it's highlighted some of the challenges that already existed. Our biggest challenge when it comes to end user experience is frankly not having enough information in a single location to really isolate root cause when issues arise, as well as anticipate them so we can prevent them. And it's that lack of visibility that results in poor communication across our teams. It leaves gaps as we try to troubleshoot issues. And it also puts us in a hard position where we're really reliant on the subjective feedback that end users give, or worse yet, apathetic feedback, meaning we never hear from them. And this maybe is one of the biggest hurdles with everyone working from home, is people aren't even sharing when they're having a bad user experience until it's too late. And it's really negatively impacting maybe patient care and telehealth, customer service if you're in that industry. And so one of the things I wanted to bubble up is, and many of you know this on the phone, but sometimes it's helpful to see in slides why it's so hard to overcome these challenges. And so why these challenges exist is really across three core areas. One, it's the inherent complexity of how you're delivering these user experiences via Citrix or Horizon. It's also the lack of experts. Many of you on the phone are experts yourself, but there's probably not enough of you in your organization to support the need. And then frankly, the free tools that are out there to really monitor and troubleshoot are not enough. They don't have embedded intelligence and automation that actually does the work for you. So let's step back and dive into a few of these. First, around the inherent complexity. And actually, Citrix put out a video that highlights this complexity that I'm happy to send out after this call if it's useful. But a lot of times, people don't realize how many technologies need to come together in order to deliver a user experience. It actually can take almost over 15 different pieces of technology. So think about your end users themselves. They are all unique. Every single end user is different. They're coming in from different locations. This is a healthcare example. So you might have different health institutes. Maybe everyone's remote. So these are all remote locations. They all have unique devices, and especially working from home, they might be using their own devices that have older technology, older disk space, et cetera, on the machine. They're all entering a different way and have different network bandwidth. They have different power around their internet connection. Then you go into the data center, and in the data center, you have a number of other technologies that are coming together to deliver that experience. You've got NetScaler, your storefront services, your broker services, your applications. If in your healthcare, you have your EHR applications. You have your underlying back-end systems, like your licensing server, your profile servers, Active Directory, and below that you have your hypervisor host layer. To add even more complexity, some or all of these components might be in the cloud. Maybe some of them are on premises, others are in AWS, Azure. Maybe you're in the process of migrating. And so when someone complains that they have a slow logon time at home, It could be any one of these that are causing the issues. And unless you have a single pane of glass that can quickly identify that's an issue in our profile setting on Active Directory, you can waste a lot of time trying to isolate that root cause of the issue. To add to this complexity then is if you don't have that single view, you also often don't have the staff that you need in order to support that environment. So we actually worked with Citrix. We have a blog and infographic on it to talk about the lack of experts that exist. And the same use case exists for Horizon. So in Citrix world, if you just take at the bare minimum, they have around 400,000 customers. On average, they say you should probably have 2 to 3 good experts, IT admins supporting their environment. So that means the demand out there is around 1.2 million. Reality is, many of you are a rare commodity. There's only 62 that have been named with the highest certifications, maybe 150 at the next level, maybe 50,000 or so that have had some varying education or certification through Citrix. So at the end of the day, the supply based on the demand is extremely low. And that means when you do know Citrix, you're getting pinged constantly. And almost what we hear from our customers is 9 out of the 10 times, it isn't even a Citrix issue. It's one of those other systems I just showed you. And finally, the last piece is the free tools just don't help enough. It's not giving you visibility across that entire experience. And this is where George Spears is a Citrix technical professional. And one day I was talking to him and he said, you know, I can spend up to 30% of my time troubleshooting just basic issues. That's my systems. I'm not running ongoing checks. I'm not improving, I'm not migrating. All the things that I want to do, I can't do because I'm troubleshooting basic issues. And so if I could give that an offload to the help desk, or if I could avoid them altogether, I would absolutely invest in a tool that could do that. And that's really where Goliath fits in. And so when you look at what type of tool do you need a purpose-built tool that has embedded intelligence and automation that can automatically identify your infrastructure, identify what to monitor and how to monitor it, and alert anytime those thresholds are exceeded. So take common trigger points. When we work with clients, we often hear their tickets around logon initiation, logon duration, and session performance. Investing in a tool that can automatically alert you when any of these conditions are met or exceeded, that's how you start to transform to be more proactive. And you don't need scripts to do this. A purpose-built tool will do it automatically for you. And you don't have to be an expert to get it set up and running. And this is really where Goliath comes in. So this is what we're doing for our clients. So here's just a sample of the organizations we work with. And if you ask any one of them, they will tell you because of the embedded intelligence and automation, using Goliath has the operational impact of hiring 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts. It has eliminated work for their staff. What you'll also hear is that we can scale up to service organizations, as you can see on this slide, but with ease of use and price profile that allows us to meet the needs of small to medium-sized organizations. And then I know we've got some health institutes on the line today. We absolutely have a stronghold on healthcare. We're known as the health IT standard because we have technical and business relationships with all the major EMR, EHR vendors, Epic, Cerner, Meditech, Allscripts. Because of those relationships, we have purpose-built modules that will give you end-to-end visibility, not only in the end user experience and the underlying infrastructure, but the performance of that EMR, EHR application itself. And in healthcare, the impact is significant because it's not only improving the user experience, as any of you know that are in this area, it's all about improving patient care. So with that introduction, I want to talk about, so what is the criteria? If you're going in and evaluating a purpose-built tool to help you really proactively address end-user performance issues, what should you be looking at? So the criteria you should be looking at, I like to bucketize into these 3 areas. First is the anticipate. This is where a lot of that embedded intelligence comes into play, where you're automatically discovering your entire environment and you're automatically identifying what to monitor and how to monitor. It doesn't require you to be an expert in any single system. The software needs to do that on its own and then alert you anytime an issue has come up. And it needs to do that in a way that you can also anticipate issues based on remote locations. And we're going to give you a demo of this in a minute. The other area is you need to be able to have deep analytics so that you have both real-time and historical data that gives you the end-to-end perspective and can identify every single IT element that could impact an end user session. This way, in a few clicks, you can quickly isolate root cause of an issue and resolve it quickly. And if in your healthcare, you cannot avoid having details that come from your EHR system. It absolutely needs to be part of this troubleshooting scenario and view. And finally, the last piece all is around data and the ability to document your end user experience and share that data across your IT teams, whether it's management, other vendors, other teams, end users. Integrate that data into third-party systems like a ServiceNow or a Splunk, so it's integrated into the workflow. And then enhance that data with out-of-the-box reports, as well as visualization tools like a Tableau or Microsoft Power BI. When organizations invest in tools that hit these three criteria and execute successfully, they truly transform from being reactive to proactive. So let's dive into the anticipate a little bit more. I already hit on this quite a bit, so I'll go through this quickly. But when you think about anticipating, you really need to have the built-in intelligence that's automatically going to monitor and alert based on those thresholds. And you shouldn't have to set these thresholds. That should be done automatically. And when thresholds are exceeded, you should have a tool that can automatically remediate if issues occur. Or maybe you don't want it on immediate, maybe you want it on demand and provide you the infrastructure and instructions so that you can execute those remediation actions as you see fit. And this is exactly some of the areas that we help this next organization. So if you look at this organization, we worked with a top US airline, and they came to us because they were experiencing very poor performance and even outages for their reservation system, which was called Sabre, that was delivered via Citrix. And their challenge was their service agents were global, and they were coming to IT reporting issues, and IT didn't even know that these issues existed. And in fact, a lot of them were being surfaced because there were issues in Citrix, and Citrix was unavailable. The other key caveat here is they could not deploy any technology on premises. So what they did is they leveraged Goliath's ability to really test application availability continuously from remote locations. They also launched it in the cloud so that it met the criteria of not being on premise. So they were testing these environments from cloud locations to make sure that the Citrix IT infrastructure was always available, their application was always available, and if it wasn't available or was performing slowly, they immediately would get an alert so that IT could address the issues before it became a major impact on customer service. With that, Yemi, I'm going to turn it over to you so you can talk a little bit more about how our application availability testing works, how it's deployed, and what it looks like for organizations that put it to use.
Thank you very much, Stacy. So before we go into the technology, I wanted to set the stage just a little bit and talk about essentially what this technology is going to be looking for. The technology Stacy mentioned is constantly testing the availability of the environment. It's basically going through and exercising the environment, testing for network availability. You know, in this case, from the cloud locations to the environment. It's testing the back-end system, so the components that actually help deliver Citrix, whether that's the Citrix core components or those IT elements that interact with those core components in order to deliver sessions correctly. It's going to test permissions, enumeration, things like that, so that if there's an issue with any one of these steps, with any one of these components from, of course, the different vendors that all have to come together to deliver Citrix, IT not only gets an early warning system or an alert to be able to get ahead of those things before they impact users at their different locations, but they also get details and screenshots so that they can they don't have to rely on end users to report or to replicate these sort of issues as they come up. So going back to the story, this is actually how the technology was deployed for this top airline. And you can see they have their their central Goliath console, and that's actually deployed in AWS. And then they have different locations or different multiple different virtual machines in different regions within AWS that act as their sort of application launch locations. And they're testing from each one of these locations 24/7, making sure that their Sabre application is available. Now, if there's any issue with the launch, with the numeration and things like that, they will get a real-time alert, and then they can analyze each one of the launches from the technology in a page called the Application Availability Analysis tab, which I am displaying here on the screen. And this screen is really broken down into two sections. You have a top section here, which is a high-level dashboard of all the launches taking place across the environment, with the blue bars here representing the launch times of the application. And then the trend line here is overall availability. So of course, out of 100%, how available are these applications and desktops that you're launching from your different locations, in this case, within AWS's private cloud. And of course, you can see at the top of the screen, you can filter based on date range, based on the locations that you're launching the applications or desktops from, and even based on the applications and desktops that you're launching. This is a very quick and easy way to sort of create a quick dashboard, to document some of the information that you've been collecting historically, send over to management to say, hey, look, from an availability perspective, we're at about 100% for the last 2 months or so. Now, the bottom section here, this is typically where they would go if they've received an alert that one of these launches from a particular location has failed. And here you can see the date and time of the application launch on the top, on the left-hand side of the screen. You can see what application or desktop was being launched. You can see where it was being launched from, and ultimately the results of that application launch. So whether it was successful or if it failed. And if it did fail, you can actually see at what stage it failed. So whether it failed trying to authenticate into the storefront, or resources were not available, or maybe somehow the storefront page is no longer available. Maybe it failed at the launch stage. You can actually see that and then do some additional investigation by clicking here on this magnifying glass icon, where essentially you get screenshots of each stage of the process. So essentially, as I mentioned before, you're getting an early warning system, but you are also getting an ability to sort of remove yourself from relying on apathetic users to report and to replicate or remember what error message they got. So you can not only get ahead of it, but you have a quick and easy starting point to be able to solve these issues and limit the end user impact altogether. Another sort of proactive portion of the technology, and Stacy mentioned this a lot, is it leverages the embedded intelligence and automation, and this will automatically discover your environment, map out the components that actually help deliver Citrix in your environment, and then apply over 250 monitoring rules to your environment. It's going to monitor for conditions, failure points, thresholds, and events that can actually cause end user experience issues if they're not taken care of. These underlying monitoring rules or intelligent alerts drive a number of screens in the technology, and specifically this one, because if issues take place that trigger any of these conditions on any of these components, they start to turn orange or red depending on the severity, so that you can quickly identify anything in the delivery infrastructure that could cause problems for your users. So you can see here at the top left-hand side of the screen, you have the ability to toggle between each of your different Citrix sites. So we have customers that have active environments, active passive environments, multiple Citrix sites to support multiple users across multiple different locations. They can all be monitored and managed from one single console here, where you're still able to get all of those monitoring rules applied universally to all of those different sites. There are a number of different views, of course, that present here, but sticking with this one, which is the infrastructure or physical view, Here you'll be able to see your NetScalers, your storefront servers, delivery controllers, as well as any supporting servers in the environment that of course are going to be interacting with your core Citrix components. So here's where you would see things like your domain controllers running Active Directory, licensing servers as you see here, your hypervisor connections, your SQL database, PBS servers. And again, all of these have modern rules applied to them. Excuse me. So as you click on these components, on the right-hand side of the screen, you can now see resource utilization, context-specific health checks based on the role of the component, and even any alerts that have triggered on any one of these components within the environment. A lot of times, this is used as a very effective knock view because as issues take place, you're able to see them quickly, click on them, identify what that issue is, and get a head start on remediating and trying to limit the end user impact altogether. You can even drill down here into the delivery layer where you can then see a more logical breakdown of the environment. And again, these are all configured out of the box. There is no reconfiguration if you make any changes to your environment. As you update your environment, this will automatically update with it. Again, it's that embedded intelligence. So you can see all of your delivery groups here, all of your machine catalogs, gold images, if those are available. And then clicking into a specific delivery group, it then builds out a machine infrastructure where you're able to see your delivery groups tied back to your machine catalogs, your image, to your hypervisor host cluster, and even the individual hypervisor host supporting the environment. And why this is important is you can then tie back user experience metrics, as you see here on the right-hand side of the screen. You can tie back user experience metrics to performance metrics on your hypervisor and your physical layer. So essentially, you have the ability to identify those bottlenecks very, very quickly because of, number one, the color-coded and knock capabilities, but also the ability for the technology to tie back user experience to these components. So effectively, you have a proactive knock view as well as a very effective troubleshooting view. So you can get ahead of issues, identify bottlenecks, and sort of move your IT organization into being more proactive rather than reactive. With that, I'll pass it back over to Stacy and we could talk about the next criteria.
Thank you, Yemi. Now, the next criteria really moves you from being that anticipating and preventing to really troubleshooting when issues arise, because issues are always going to arise, especially when you have users working from home. And there's so much in that environment you can't control around their behavior, around the endpoint they're using, around their connection speed and bandwidth opportunities. And so when you don't have visibility into every aspect, you absolutely need a tool that can bring it all together and give you the visibility you need so that you can isolate root cause, whether it be part of the end user experience and their behavior, or if it's because of the underlying infrastructure and any one of those 15 plus technologies we had called out, or if it's even on the application side, especially these EHR applications. And you need to be able to see that data not only in real time, but also historical sessions. I'm sure many of you have been in that scenario. When you look at tickets and issues that come up, they tend not to be live and in real time. It tends to be an hour ago, a day ago, 2 days ago, right? Users take time before they actually file a ticket, before they actually report the issue. And the other big key is you as a Citrix admin might not own all of these components or pieces. And so it really becomes challenging if you see everything working correctly and you think, you know what, I think it's an issue with our storage, or I think it might be an issue with the networking team, or it might be an issue over here. Those conversations really become difficult when you don't have objective evidence. And so coming all together then, what you need is a tool that can provide you that end-to-end visibility for every IT element that can impact that end user. Let's go into a user story to explain that a little bit more. So this is a great example. It's with Penn National Insurance. And I like this because they actually came to Goliath almost a year ago today and said, we have this remote worker initiative going on. We want more and more of our employees to be able to work from home. And they had invested in Citrix, iGel, they were rolling out VDI. but they were really challenged because their end users kept complaining because their Cisco soft phone calls were dropping. And their IT team was looking, going, everything in our infrastructure looks great. But what was happening is management was going, well, if this isn't going to work, then we're going to stop the program. And so they put Goliath in so they could have visibility, and they were able to very quickly isolate the root cause of when these calls were dropping. And it wasn't because of the underlying infrastructure, it absolutely was because of the Wi-Fi connection. And in this case, they had several users where once they started digging in, it says, well, your calls look like it's great starting from 9 a.m. and then around 3 p.m. they start dropping. What happens at 3 p.m.? And users were saying, well, my kids come home from school. They're probably online, they're gaming, they're streaming audio files or video files on Netflix. They didn't have enough bandwidth to support all the users that were now in their house. And it's interesting because, like I said, this story was a year ago today. Now this story is happening everywhere. When everyone had, working from home, they had their kids that were Zooming calls for school. This was a top issue for IT because users couldn't use the applications they needed because they themselves didn't have enough bandwidth. And they're saying, I don't know, Netflix works great. Well, using Citrix with a soft phone or other applications, it requires a certain level of bandwidth. So just because you can get on Google or stream Netflix doesn't mean that your work applications are going to work in the same way. Yemi, do you want to walk through a demonstration to show how we're able to give that visibility?
Absolutely. Yeah, and exactly where they would go, Penn National would go when a user is called in complaining about slowness, is this page here. This is the Citrix virtual apps and desktop session display. And this is where all of those sessions in the environment would populate. And this is where you can go back historically and take a look at sessions. So I'm displaying sessions for the last 2 months. We don't average or roll up any information here. So essentially you can go back and see sessions that happened 2 months ago, 3 months ago, depending on how long you would like to keep the data for. And you get the same amount of granular data in those sessions as you would from a session from today or an active session. And from here, you can, of course, filter for the users that you're looking for, filter for a specific delivery group, essentially giving you a quick and easy way to identify the sessions that you're looking to troubleshoot, and then click down on the session to get some information about why this user is experiencing some sort of slowness within the environment. So as you click on the session here, you now get a pop-up of about 7 tabs that is going to break down everything that went into this user session. Everything that went into their logon performance, their ICA connection, and their activity within their session. It breaks down the VDI performance, the hypervisor host performance, the applications and processes that were running inside of the user sessions, even down to the alerts or event logs that have taken place during that user session. So everything's going to be aligned to the time frame of the session, and it's going to include all of the components that actually went into the delivery of that session for the user. And then you have the summary tab here, which allows you to identify quickly where the slowness or where issues are taking place and what's impacting that issue, without even having to drill into some of the additional tabs for deeper detail. So here in the summary tab, you can see at the top of the screen all of those components as we mentioned before. So the client endpoint machine down to the delivery controller, to the domain controller, even the session host and hypervisor host that supported the session. You can get a high-level breakdown of the logon summary in the next section. And then here, key performance metrics. This is where Penn National spent a lot of their time, or spent most of their time within the console, and this enabled them to quickly identify those sort of issues that Stacy described, right? So here you can see their round trip time to tell you definitively whether or not they were having a problem within their session. Then you have network latency, and this is real-time network latency. This is not a ping-based network latency or test package, and you don't have to write or review any script to get this information. This is what we're getting from the ICA protocol itself due to our deep integration with Citrix and the ICA protocol. So essentially, Penn National was able to identify if a user is having round trip time issues, how much of that is being impacted by poor network performance. That allows you to determine, okay, whether this is a resource problem and we need to be taking a look at our infrastructure, or this is a network specific issue. And this is something that we could either take a look at our internal network or something from the user side. So when you take a look at network latency, Penn National was discovering that a lot of their users working from home had a lot of network latency. So with network latency, you then have to determine whether it's within the data center or outside of the data center. That's when this connection speed metric comes into play. This is the amount of connectivity or amount of bandwidth that the user has for their Citrix session at their location. So whether this is a home user, whether this is a user connecting in from Starbucks, whether this is a user inside of the company network, you're able to tell essentially what their download speed is as it pertains to Citrix. So as you can see here in this particular case, you have a user that starts off with pretty good bandwidth and you see a large drop. You can see exactly at what times this user is having poor connectivity issues at their locations. So as Stacy mentioned, this is the type of information that is used to have productive conversations with end users, saying, hey, it looks like at about 3 p.m. you had a major drop in connectivity. That's when you could talk about, okay, who's on your network? How far away from you, how far away from the router are you? Maybe you need to connect directly to the modem. These sort of conversations are enabled because of the deep integration with Citrix and these metrics that typically are not available to IT. And of course, to get some deeper metrics, you can head over to the ICA HDX channel, which is going to break down ICA latency, network latency, round trip time on a single view. Of course, it's going to break down the different bandwidth, not only the bandwidth utilization, upload speed and download speed from the users, but you can see bandwidth in and out for the users as well. And then finally, at the bottom of this ICA usage chart on the bottom left, you can essentially see, and I can expand this for a second, the types of bandwidth that are being used inside of the sessions. So not only was Penn National able to see, connection or correlate poor connectivity to those poor sessions, they were also able to leverage this information here showing, audio bandwidth, input and output, and how much of it is being used within each individual session, especially when they're using their soft phones. They're able to use this information to have productive conversations internally with their network team saying, hey, we need more bandwidth to support these types of activities inside of the sessions. All of this information is available real time and historically. So you can sort of go back and track this information over time as Penn National did in order to deliver a better experience to the end users. So with that, I'll pass it back over to Stacy and we can talk about the final criteria.
Thanks, Yemi. The final criteria is all around documentation and data. And so when you talk about what you just saw here, this is providing you real-time information to troubleshoot. And, oh, sorry, Yemi. I guess one thing we did forget to mention is we saw that in Citrix, all of the same information is available around Horizon as well. So we know our demo environment had Citrix there. We do have quite a few customers that have VMware Horizon. The same experience given your metrics is available for you as well. So now going into document, right? And it's not just about having data, but it's how do you deliver that information in a meaningful and insightful way so that you can make it usable across your organization. And so you need to be able to share it easily. So get it exported, whether it be PDF, Excel, CSV, enabling it to email or print. We have organizations that are sending management weekly, monthly reports that are showing things like logon times and benchmarking it, showing improvement over time. You also want to be able to integrate that data and documentation. And so we work with, whether it be a IT service management to get it integrated at the help desk with like a ServiceNow or BMC Remedy. We also can go ahead and integrate it into event management technologies like a Splunk. And finally, you want to be able to enhance it. And we're going to walk through some of the out-of-the-box reports we have. But a lot of our customers then go on to take that data in the raw format and put it in visualization tools like Power BI and Tableau, specifically for that benchmarking and trending that they need to have. So Yemi, do you want to talk a little bit about the types of data that we can document around and some of the example reports that we have from our customers today?
Absolutely. Yeah, and when we talk about the types of data, what we found with our customers is that you can sort of break them down into a couple of things, into three categories. The first, of course, is going to be user performance. We want to understand how our users actually, what is the user experience inside of our environment. Of course, you could see end user experience reports, latency reports, so on and so forth, going into the different elements of user experience. Then you have activity, which of course has been very, very important during the time where people are working from home, because it's very important to understand, number one, are users actually working? And number two, which some may say it's even more important, is how is user experience actually affecting performance for our users while they are working from home? And then finally, of course, the system performance, back-end performance of those underlying components, whether those are on-premises, in the cloud, physical or virtual, underlying performance of those components that help deliver Citrix to those users. So we can run through a number of reports here, some of the ones that are very popular and the ones that our customers have told us have been very valuable to them. So the first one we'll go over is a high-level end user experience report. This is going to combine, of course, logon performance and client speed and ICA latency, showing you the performance of a sort of a high-level view of end user experience for your users in the environment. But then we have other reports that break it down further. So the next one here is a logon duration report, and here it opens up the logon duration. So not only are you getting the overall logon duration value, but you're showing the different stages of the logon process and how much of that logon is being impacted by those different stages. I know this has been very helpful for a lot of our IT staff because this allows you to, number one, show improvements in the environment over time, and maybe more importantly, identify which portions of the logon process that you need to tackle next in order to deliver a better experience for your users. One that has been extremely popular during this sort of work from home times that we're in is the end user productivity report that I'm showing here on the screen. And this report is something that we generated and we created specifically to support our customers that are now delivering remote sessions to users. And you can see here on the left-hand side of the screen, this is going to show all of your users that are logged in for the particular time period of the session. It's also going to show their IP addresses. It's going to show how they're connecting into the environment, but more importantly, it's going to show their start time, end time, the duration of their session, and then this interaction metric, which is the amount of time that they are actually spending creating ICA traffic inside of their sessions. So this is going to be taken into consideration all the different types of traffic that could be used inside of a session and what actual usage or actual activity is going to be. So this is how we're able, because of our deep Citrix integration, we're able to track these metrics and sort of put them in a way that allows us to accurately depict activity inside of a session. This is going to be very different from what you will get from Windows or the Citrix metrics, which really aren't designed to track activity. So conversely, with the interaction metric, you have the inactivity metric, which will tell you the amount of time that they're not interacting with the environment. You have an interaction percentage, and then a max inactivity metric, which tells you the maximum amount of time that they were inactive in their session. This gives you additional insight into what the user is doing. Maybe they took lunch for an hour, right? Or maybe they just didn't log out of their VDI, and their VDI was running all night or something like that. So it gives you some additional context into that activity. And then finally, of course, you can see what applications were running within their sessions. Now, as Stacy mentioned, these are sort of the out-of-the-box reports that you could run on demand, or of course you could export out, share with customers or share with IT staff, and you can also have running on a scheduled basis. But there is also an ability to enhance some of the data, leveraging some additional tools like Power BI or Tableau or even Microsoft Excel. So we have a couple of examples here of how we've created templates that a lot of our customers leverage on a daily basis. So here's an average logon duration report that is generated via Microsoft Power BI. And here, it keeps the granular data that you're getting from the logon duration report by showing you, of course, the different stages of the process and how long and how much each one is impacting the different logon times here at the top of the report. But then you can see this is broken down based on the different applications. In this case, this is a Cerner environment, so you can see the Cerner applications. It breaks it down by day, by hour, so you get an understanding of the entire logon time in any slice of, or in any way that you would like to slice the data. Another report here is the different stages of logon times, and this is broken down by day, gives you sort of the max, the min times, the different stages of the process, average over a number of different days for a specific delivery group. Again, giving you that ability to track and trend information and slice them and present them in ways that is going to allow you to make real-time decisions. And then we just wanted to point out as well that we have a number of these reports for VMware Horizon as well. So we focused a lot on Citrix in today's webinar, but here you can see that we can break down the group names and the groups and the logon times with as well as the different stages within those logon times for VMware Horizon as well. And with that, I'll pass it over to Stacy and we can go into questions.
Thanks, Yemi. One question that always comes up, and if there's others, please do put them in the Q&A box, is with our, how long does it take to get up and running? Well, you can get up and running in less than 2 hours with Goliath, and that's because of our turnkey services. So we have a white glove implementation that will help you get installed. We do work with our technical consultants like Yemi to get all out of the box reporting and alert set up in your environment, and we can do that in less than 2 hours. And the reason we can get you up and running is because of the embedded intelligence and the product. And so like earlier, it's almost as if you've hired 2 to 3 full-time troubleshooting experts available and never take the lunch break. So with a few questions, one of the questions is different from Citrix Director.
Yeah, Stacey, that's a good question. I think we almost we get that so much on these webinars. I think we actually have a slide here that can go through and help us depict exactly the answer to that question. So if you look at this slide, in the middle of the slide, and these components here that aren't red, these are actually components that Director or any of the sort of native tools would be able to monitor. And of course, Director does a good job of monitoring these elements. However, what we do know is that these elements are not the only contributing factors to user experience issues. Of course, we know that there are endpoints involved, there are EHR applications involved, different hypervisors involved. You have back-end systems that interact with those Citrix components. And then on top of that, there are network, storage, printers, users themselves and their behaviors. And those things just won't be, you just can't monitor them using some of the native tools like Director. What Goliath is going to do is monitor all of these components in one single view so that if there's an issue with any stage or any of these components that impacts the user, you're able to get visibility and to pinpoint exactly where and why that issue is taking place. The second thing that I would point out as being sort of a differentiating factor is the historical retention and the ability to leverage that data to make real-time decisions. Because of course, real-time data is important, but if a user doesn't report an issue for weeks or days, having a tool that has hourly reporting, really isn't going to be able to give you the answers that you're looking for. So those are sort of the things that I would point to as being differentiating factors between Director and a tool like Goliath.
Great. Thank you, Yemi. Next question that came in. What metrics do you get for logon initiation and duration?
Sure, yeah. I think what we can do here is pull up some of our archives here. When it comes to the logon duration or the logon process, there's a sort of fundamental difference between Goliath and any other tools out there, specifically with the amount of data that we collect within the logon process. So we're going to actually break open every single stage of the process. It's going to break down what's happening at the brokering stages, whether that's within the data center or whether that is at at the client side, ICA file download, how long it takes to establish the micro VPN connection. And then what we also do is we expand the different sections of the process as well. So not only can you see the client and server validation, but you can open up authentication and see all the OUs that the users are part of, how long it took for LDAP calls to take place, so on and so forth. And what we have here on the screen is showing you each individual group policy that affected the user session and how long each one took. And you're getting this information down to the policy name. So essentially, if you're having a problem with GPOs, if you're having a problem with authentication, you can expand this section, find exactly what's causing the problem so you can focus on solving that particular problem as opposed to spending your time in different tools and management consoles looking for a potential problem in the environment. Hopefully that was able to answer the question there.
If you have a follow-up, just next question. When you test application availability, can you also test performance within the application?
Absolutely. Yeah, we have additional technology that can go further into the application and specifically the front end performance of the application if needed. So not only do we have the application availability monitor that is going to be testing for issues within the Citrix delivery infrastructure, but you can we have technology that can continue along and test a front end application as well. It's very heavily used by a lot of our healthcare customers to give that sort of end-to-end view of performance, whether that's from a back-end systems and application perspective or a front-end application performance perspective as well.
All right. Next question is, where's the data coming from that you're to collect the data? I guess, where's the data coming from? Do I need to get an agent on every machine?
That's a good question. So we have a sort of robust technology, which is going to collect information from a number of different areas through a number of different methods. There is a lightweight intelligent agent that is deployed in the data center, essentially. So on your Citrix delivery components, your delivery controller, storefronts, things like that, as well as the VDAs. So the machines that are hosting sessions, whether those are physical desktops, virtual servers, things like that. And then, but keep in mind that there's no technology required on endpoint locations, right? So the machines that users are leveraging to access the Citrix environment, there's no need for technology to be deployed on that. We also, of course, have a number of ways to integrate and to pull information agentlessly. Either that is leveraging SNMP, syslog, and some of the additional sort of IT protocols, but we also have API integration into Citrix, into the hypervisor platforms as well. And that's why we're able to collect a large amount of data because of our sort of the robustness of the technology and the ability to leverage a number of different techniques and protocols to pull information into the environment.
Perfect. And Yemi, you probably already hit on this just in your last answer, but a question did come in. Do you integrate with Nutanix?
Absolutely. Yeah, that is, is something that, as we mentioned before, we have a number of agentless techniques and leveraging different protocols to be able to pull in and monitor information from the major hypervisor platforms that are out there.
Great. And I have one last question, unless anyone else has any, which is baselining Logon performance for 8. Can I do that?
Stacy, I apologize. Your audio kind of cracked up for a second. Do you mind repeating the question?
If I report lining Logon performance for 6 weeks, can you do that?
Was that Logon performance for 6 weeks? Absolutely. Yeah. As you mentioned before, we do not average or roll up any information that we collect, any of the data, and we also give you the ability to choose how long you would like to keep data for. So we've actually done this for a number of different customers, help them be able to track performance over a specific time period so that they can show improvements in the environment and show management that whatever techniques or whatever technology that they implemented into the environment have actually had a positive impact on user experience, whether that's via logon times, ICA latency, and any other metric that we collect within the technology.
Great. Well, that is all that I have. If anyone is interested in either getting a free trial of the software, a demo, or you have further questions, please reach out to techinfo@goliathtechnologies.com, and we'd be happy to coordinate that follow-up activity with you. Yemi, I want to thank you again for a great webinar, and I want to thank everyone for taking their time out of their hectic day to join us today. Thank you, and have a great rest of your day.